Oh boy, has it been another week or what? Really, really flew by again. One more time this week. Come on, chat. Come on, get in here. What's happening with everybody this week? If you're new to the channel, if you're just one of the many subscribers that just joined the channel, this is the live show. It happens every Friday evening after the whole week wraps up, and we get to go over some of the news stories that we were talking about all week, and even some of the ones that we didn't get to. And that's really what it comes down to. It's like there's a lot of nuance to fit into a 10-minute video. It's really hard. I try my best. I try to cover any given story the best way that I possibly can, but I can't always get into all the little nitty-gritty and nuance and stuff like that. So this is what the live chat is good for, getting into some of the more little in particulars of everything. And this week, crazy, yeah, the scene, everything looks different. Everything sounds kind of different. I bet you it sounds a little bit more reverby. There's a little bit more reverb sound happening. Yeah, that's because I had to tear apart my studio, get rid of it. I had to get rid of it. I'm in a makeshift sort of setup in my garage where the studio used to be. And yeah, we're gonna be moving. This is a really sticky situation for us, getting very short notice to get out of the house and move to another place. So we have something here in town that we have set up for the next few months. It's a small place. It's going to be cramped. You're going to see more scenes similar to this, but it's the way it's going to go. Echoing. Is it like a full-on echo, or is it just reverby? I'm going to have to listen back to this right now just to hear what you mean. Full-on echo, or is it just... No, it's just reverb. That's what we're hearing. Okay, let's get into this. Nicholas LeBond with a $10 super chat. First super chat I've seen from you, Nicholas. Thank you so much. I won't shamelessly plug a radio musical here regarding the mandates, but I think you and Freedom Folk would like it once it is available. I'll get you access. Tip of the hat for all you do, Clyde. Well, yeah, I'm interested in that. Holy cow. Where is it? Is it right in Vancouver, or is it, because I would like to check that out. Let me know. How do I get in touch with you to find out more about this? I love it when people get creative with stuff that is important to them, and the whole pandemic thing is very important, of course. So yeah, let's find out more about this musical thing, because what was it? I've always, it's on my bucket list, but one of the things I wanted to see is somebody put on a production of Evil Dead the musical, and it comes like a Gwar concert where there's a splatter row where you're gonna get covered in all the crazy goops that come out of if you've ever seen Evil Dead, best horror comedy movie ever. It's yeah, to see it live would be amazing. That would be something else. So yeah, keep me posted on that one. I would definitely love to see that, Nicholas. Give us more information in the chat. I'd love to talk about it. Apart from that, the protest is happening in Lacombe. Okay, well, we're gonna get to that. The second part of the second half of the stream, we're gonna be bringing some people in to talk about these protests that are happening. I'm not sure which protest you're talking about, but there are some protests happening across Canada, and some of them really they leave me speechless, to say the least. It's yeah, it's insane what's happening and what people are standing up for, and what they're doing. So let's we'll discuss a lot of this. Hey Clyde, why do people say everything is a conspiracy theory, but we have proofs? Well, that's just that. It's hardly a conspiracy theory when it's really out there in the open. I mean, it was only, I want to say, a year and a half ago that the World Economic Forum, just the the actual like stating that there is an organization called the World Economic Forum was a conspiracy theory. They've always had a YouTube channel. They have a website. They have world leaders show up to it. They have for years, but talking about it was a conspiracy theory for so long. It really is crazy. Theo Therm, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, member for 13 months. It's been a while. It's been longer than 13 months since the convoy, the best part of my week and Friday night staple. Thanks, Clyde. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for supporting the channel for 13 months. That's amazing. That's really cool. So, what do we even get into first? Let's, I'm running out of tinfoil. Yeah, exactly. There are some conspiracy theories out there, and there's some wacko things that you hear about. But I mean, what was a conspiracy theory just yesterday and now is just factual? I mean, the pandemic was a sham. We all kind of know that now. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and yet they all, the government didn't want to just leave it to 2 weeks. We know that now. Alice Avonley, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, with a $5 super chat. What's the difference of conspiracy theory and truth? 12 months. Yeah, there you go. So that's what's crazy about the whole Alex Jones was right thing. So he said even some inflammatory, like crazy stuff that turned out to be true. I mean, the whole they're turning the friggin' frogs gay, that thing, actually true. Maybe not in that exact way of stating it, but he was reporting on it, and that was just one of the flamboyant ways he had to express himself about that. But what's true is that there are chemicals that are in the water that are actually changing the hormones of amphibians. And if it's changing the hormones of amphibians, well, what else is this stuff doing? So these are some of the chemicals that have been going into certain water supplies, and people are curious. And what's been happening lately? We've been having a pandemic of other sorts, maybe a pandemic of people contemplating not being the sex that they are. This is something that's, and those people have always existed. I'm not trying to cut up people, and don't get me wrong. There have always been that transvestites or transgender or whatever you want to end up calling them. Those people have always existed, but not in the numbers that we're seeing today. What is the deal? Yeah, microplastics. That was like something that was brought up on Joe Rogan, and that was a really interesting conversation about the length of taint. Get into it on your own time. Go check it out. That was on Joe. I can't remember with who. It's a social contagion. There's oh man, there's so much to talk about tonight. It really is crazy. But let's start with this one. Let's start with let's pop this out. I wanted to share this one. This is a great meme. Here's an idea: a reality show where socialist college students are sent to a country that closely resembles their desired political system and left to survive for a few months. Oh, that would be great. I think that would be an amazing television show. So I tweeted this one out. How do you think it would go down? Better yet, how entertaining do you think it would be? Because I think it would be tremendously entertaining, to say the least. Unbelievable, unreal. Where are we now? Nicholas with another $5 super chat. I appreciate your enthusiasm. What would be the best way to share information on it? I know the creator, and there's not a lack of interesting info. Do you have a Twitter? Do you use X? If you do, put your @ in the chat, and I'll follow you, and you can follow me, and then you'll have access to DMing me. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me, because I check my Twitter DMs frequently. So get in the chat. You don't have to do another super chat. Just put a chat in there. Nope, I'm a lurker. Oh no, okay. So you don't have a Twitter. You can email me, but my email is so flooded, it's crazy. What else? Instagram? Do you Instagram? You You can send me a message on Instagram. A lot of people use Instagram. Yeah, it's really hard to get through on my email anymore. Anyway, come on, talk about lockdown. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. We're doing a whole show here, my man. We're doing a whole show. We'll get to it. But yeah, Nicholas, if you can, hopefully there's a way we can get in touch. No worries. I'll super chat you then in the next couple of months. Okay, well that works too. Please get my attention about it, because if that's a thing, I'd love to see it. Is it going to be here is it going to be in the Vancouver area, or what is that? Knobber saying finally pulling the trigger on Texas, Clyde. Yeah, we're going to pull the trigger on Texas. It's just a matter of time, right? So we have a bunch of stuff to get prepared. I'm a citizen of the United States. My kids don't have their citizenship yet. I got to work on that. My wife doesn't have her green card yet. We have to work on that. So, yeah, this is a matter of, months. We're like months away from it. But in the meantime, we have something temporary worked out. After the end of this month, at the end of this month, we're out of our home. And we've been, if you notice sort of a, not a huge amount of videos coming out. Well, that's because of, I've been so busy packing up and tearing down, doing construction and all this other stuff. So that would explain why. Clyde doesn't appreciate sexy pictures emailed to him. Yeah, no, not really. Not so much. Where was I? I saw, Nicholas saying no. Made in Ottawa, all audio. Okay. Well, let me know. Just let me know when it's coming out, because that sounds fun. I love people's creativity. I really do. I think it's fantastic. There's so many good ones, and we're gonna get into some of that tonight, actually. What out for CRA and IRS implications? What out for CRA? So Canada revenue and IRS implications for me. There's no issue for me. No, I would have no issues. Pay your taxes. I mean, that will keep them off your back. That's all you ever have to do with those guys. 666 people in the chat. That's getting dangerous now. We're in dangerous territories. That's for sure. Let's get into some of this stuff. Because we got a lot to cover, and then we have you guys probably know him, the amazing Zoltan. He'll be joining us later, because he was actually brave enough to go visit one of these encampments in Vancouver, where there's the Sierra River. I like that. He went and braved the masses and went to one of these encampments, the protest for Palestine. We're gonna get into that. That's not something right now, because there's other things to talk about. Let's get into this. Solar tweeted at me this week saying, a new study, risk of suicide and self-harm following gender affirmation surgery individuals who underwent gender-affirming surgery had a 12.12-fold higher suicide attempt risk than those who did not. This is massive, because the claim has always been that no, if you don't allow your children to undergo this stuff, there's a higher risk of those kinds of ideations in those individuals. Well, this is really going the other way. And to such a tremendous amount. Now, the study, which I could pull up here because the link is right here, is a study from the National Library of Medicine. And they did this. It was the risk of suicide and self-harm following gender affirmation surgery. The abstract, the introduction to the idea here is, with the growing acceptance of transgender individuals, the number of gender affirmation surgeries has increased. Now, one thing that's interesting to talk about here is that while they're talking about hate speech and all this stuff with Bill C-63, they're actually talking about saying that any form of trying to convince your kid that they're not transgender is considered a conversion therapy, as if it's the same as like conversion therapy, trying to, you know, pray the gay away. That was like the whole old thing. And they're saying that that's a hate crime to try to convert your kid away from this ideology that they never would have been introduced to if it weren't for this social contagion and teachers that have been pushing this on children so much these days. And I mean, you see it everywhere, all the way down to daycare. I mean, I was going to send my kid to the daycare that my daughter went to, but now they have all the flags out in the daycare. They even have, the little kid crossing the road, it says slow, and it's like a silhouette of a kid, and it's got the pride flag, and not just the normal pride, like a rainbow flag, but the one with the chevrons, the one that signifies all of this stuff. And it's like, wow, like you go that far in this. This is really terrifying. So I saw that they pulled all of that out right after the million-person march last September. And well, that really woke me up and said, well, I guess my son won't be going there, because we don't want anybody saying that's our daughter. And that's really, James Lindsay explains all of this. Slow kids crossing. It was one of those things, holding the flag. Yeah, it's unbelievable. But here comes the studies to show that this is actually really bad. So with the growing acceptance of transgender individuals, the number of gender-affirming surgeries has increased. Transgender individuals face elevated depression rates, leading to an increase in suicide ideation and attempts. This study evaluates the risk of suicide or self-harm associated with gender affirmation procedures. So this isn't just, we're not just talking about you telling your kid, yeah, you can be whatever you want. They're talking about introducing hormones, introducing surgery, introducing these kinds of things. Now, it gives the methodology. Again, I mean, I could put the link for this in the chat. Why don't I do that? So if you want to read this on your own time, you can get into the nitty gritty of it. There it is in the chat for everybody. And this kind of gives away the latency between how much you're hearing and seeing me, and then you see when I put it in the chat. But here we go. So the results: individuals who underwent gender-affirming surgery had a 12.12-fold higher suicide attempt risk than those who did not. Now, that would be, what is that? 1,212% higher risk. Now, we were told for so long, if you don't go along with this, you're killing your kid, because your kid's going to be suicidal if you don't go along with this. Well, this goes completely directly against that. It goes directly against that, and it shows that if you affirm this and you go ahead and go into the case of surgical intervention, then this is where things go awry, and this is really bad. I'll bring the chat in so you guys can see it on the screen. So, because all you're seeing is text from this study anyway. Only male and female, period. Interesting that I've been bringing this up for a long time, that there are actually four genders. There are four genders. They're a grammatical context, not a social construct. They're a grammatical construct. And go over it really quickly again for people who haven't heard this. The four genders in the English language are masculine, feminine, not male and female. Those are sexes. Any living organism has a sex, and some like amphibians can change theirs, but they don't change them at will. They change them due to environmental circumstances. And here's the thing: the gender thing is really confusing for a lot of people, and this is why, because they think that it's your way of describing things, which it is, but it not in the context that they say. If a word is a masculine word or a feminine word, it's just to describe something that is physically there. A dog is not either, and this is why the gender for that word is indeterminate. It means that you don't know what the gender is, or you don't know what the sex is of the thing that you're describing. Where if you say bull, or can we say it on YouTube? A bitch, a cow, or a buck. You know what I mean? Like these kind of terms: doe, buck, cow, bull. These are gendered words that describe a thing that has a sex. And then the last one, of course, is neuter, like earpods. Earpods. They don't have a sex, so we don't even assign that a gender. And that's the whole thing. A dog in French is two different words. Okay, fair enough. But French, no. But this is where people confuse things. Steve's Hyde, member for 9 months, says, I've been thinking all this stuff would be confusing in French. Yeah, I'm sure it would be confusing in French because they don't have the indeterminate and neuter. They just have two genders. And again, it's to describe physical things. The physical things have sexes, or they have no sexes, and that there's no in between. It's just that, and you're using the context of gender as a construct to describe a physical thing. Anyway, I've gone over this one ad nauseum before, and I probably go over this again and again until I refine it down to like a few sentences that make it really quick and easy to understand. But this is not something. There are no 72 genders or however many they've come up with. Those are just attributes. Like if you want to give yourself attributes, whatever, it's completely separate from your sex. It has nothing to do with it. But you can go ahead and describe your attributes all you like. Group yourself in groups. But here's where the study went. So I went into that again. So again, the results here: individuals who underwent gender affirming surgery, which now that you know the context of gender and not being sex, it's gender affirming. So it's affirming attributes that you've made up in your head. How about we, just affirm reality? But anyway, gender affirming surgery had a 12.12 fold higher suicide attempt risk than those who did not. Also goes into, compared to the tubal ligation vasectomy controls. I guess this is people who can no longer have children because of just getting fixed, I guess. Just spay and neuter your dogs, your cats and dogs, as Bob Barker used to always say. The risk was 5.03 fold higher before propensity matching and remained significant at 4.17 fold after matching. For the gender affirming patients with similar results with the peritonitis, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, controls. Now the conclusion in this study: gender affirming surgery is significantly associated with elevated suicide attempt risk, underlining the necessity for comprehensive post-procedure psychiatric support. So they're not necessarily for or against it. This is being neutral. This is just saying that if people are to go ahead with this, they have a higher risk of suicidal ideation. This is the reality of the situation. So now, if anybody comes out and says, "Well, you better go along with it, or you'll have a dead kid," and this is what scares parents into going along with this. What's been said is inaccurate. This is the new accurate. This is now accurate. The study has been performed, and we now know that this is the case. You're worse off to have gone through with it. You're better off to wait it out. If you haven't that, like, wait it out. Maybe your kid just gets over it. And that a lot of the studies, and Deborah So goes over this, who's a sex doctor from Vancouver, Canada. She goes over this. She's been on many podcasts. She has a podcast of her own. Great podcast. Go check her out, Dr. Deborah So. She talks about this at length. And yeah, it's so often the case that these thoughts end up becoming just a whatever, that was a phase that your kid went through. So really consider this moving forward. But let's have a moment with the chat here, because I'm sure as I'm explaining this, a lot of stuff has been said. If you feel free to yell at me. My pronouns are I hate the woke. Okay. Threat of suicide is a clue that there is a mental issue. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. Testing my limits and paying the price. I was the biggest tomboy back in the day, but I sure didn't want to be a boy. And that's the thing. So yeah, some kids, some little girls are tomboys. Some little boys are very effeminate, very emotional, all of that. It doesn't mean anything. It just means this is the personality of your child. Just roll with it without introducing other weirdness. I can't stress that enough. It really is crazy that's something that we see happening, and it's terrifying for a parent that wants their children to just grow up and become the person that they would become without this undue influence in their lives. That's definitely a thing. Tam is a boy. Okay, so I've heard those rumors. That's funny. Yeah. Oh, bring on the banana da. Yeah, that's the new emoji this week. So members of the channel can use the banana da. That's the the Banana Republic of the North. Banana, so get that in there. If you're a member, then you can feel free to use all the different emojis that we have: the dumpster fire, the banana, all of that stuff. Yeah, well, we keep adding these suggestions. People leave their suggestions. Do you think if we think it's funny, we'll get it in there? That's the way to do. Tam's so cool. What? What's Tam done now? Well, we're gonna get into that in a moment here. But we're still talking about this thing. Okay, I had to skip forward for the first couple of lines in this song. This is a song that's kind of going viral right now. The guy Ryan Harkness who put this on, it looks like he's shadow banned, so he's getting no view count. But Hazel Appleyard tweeted this out, and it's getting the rounds, and it's pretty funny. I'm just gonna make sure I'm not blasting anybody's ears out. You'll recognize the tune right away, but it's too funny.
Really good chance I'm gonna take my life one day. At least I'll get more attention than all those normie gays. It's a damn shame.
It's a damn shame.
What the world's gotten to when a creature like me believes that it's true that he could just wake up and not be a dude. But he is. Oh, he is living as a new girl with a Y chromosome.
Okay, I'll pause it right there. I'll leave a link for everyone to go check this one out. Living as a new girl with a Y chromosome. We all know the song, so go check that one out. Share it out with whoever you want. That's a good one. It really is. G Meister, member for 23 months. You believe that? Like, everybody else has quite a bit of catching up to do compared to G Meister. Holy cow, 23 months. I can't believe I've been doing this for 23 months. New journey. Why do you get out of here, Windows? Remind me later. Why are you popping that up on front of me? Tam be damned. Smack the like button while it's still free. There you go. Get in there. Smack that like button. Appreciate that. Actually, really, I'm looking at the numbers here now. We got 845 people in the chat, and 400. We got like less than half the people in here have hit the like button. It's free. It helps out a ton, especially with all this downtime with the move and all that stuff. Get those numbers up. It really helps. It encourages the algorithm to share this out a little bit more. Get it out there. That's the whole trick to this. Let's not be shy. Hit that like button. Let's get into this other story, because this one's interesting to me. Hopefully it'll be interesting to you. Western Standard reporting that Zuckerberg gets the last laugh in news battle with the Liberal government. Now, we know Bill C-18 has been a boondoggle, and it was something that actually backfired on Trudeau, and it's crazy. G Meister in the chat with gifting 5 memberships to the channel. Thank you, G Meister, and everybody who got a membership. Get out there and give a big old thanks. And now you can use the new banana. You can use that emoji. Get that in the chat. Have fun with that, because we worked on that. Okay, so Bill C-18 was a big backfire on the Liberals. What they tried to do with Bill C-18 was control the news on the internet, where people see alternatives, all kinds of alternative news, stuff like that. Not just the independents like Western Standard, or you can name a bunch of them, True North, Rebel News, all these other ones that people have been paying attention to. The whole purpose was to harm them. But the thing is, I'm not considered a news agency, but people are sharing my stuff out there quite a bit, and I still get the news out there to a lot of people, even on Meta, and that's the reality. Even though I'm not really on Meta, people share the stuff out there. And if you're not sharing links, if you splice a bit out of one of my videos and you just pop it in a page, Facebook doesn't know what to do with that, so they just run it and let it go. So I encourage people, like, don't just rip whole videos and post them on Facebook, but clip out segments and post them on Facebook. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. Get it out there. And you don't even have to leave a link. Just let people know that this is a YouTuber that the branding's everywhere. They'll see it. They'll be able to find it themselves. So anyway, they were trying to harm independents and prop up the their news, right? The government run Pravda run news agency, CBC, all the ones that they buy out. Global, CTV, all of these news agencies, they wanted to control it, and this is what they were doing. Now, the article gets into it. He who laughs last laughs the longest. That certainly seems to be the case for Facebook parent company Meta. Let's get the chat in here, because look at that perfect split. It's just over all the ads. I love that. That certainly seems to be the case for parent company Meta, Facebook's parent company Meta, in this ongoing war of words with the Canadian government over paying for news content under its ill-conceived Online News Act. Now, how did they implement this? This was the dumbest part of the whole act. They put it out there at these online companies, platforms. They said anytime somebody shares a link to one of your to a news website, you have the company Meta or Twitter or Google or whatever has to pay the federal government a fee, and then that fee it goes to an agency that pays all the news agencies, right? And this is so it's awful, and what a terrible way to implement anything. And of course, it's a cash grab. It's a cash grab's payola. It's give us money. They were actually counting their money before they were counting their chickens before they hatched on this one. Pablo Rodriguez was bragging to CTV how they were going to get $150 million. No, they were more. I can't remember how much it was. 300 million, something like that. Crazy numbers. That they were just going to pull in an ad revenue, as if these companies wouldn't just go, oh, okay, well, just no, we're not allowing links to news sites on our webpage. And that's exactly what they did. It was the most predictable thing that they possibly could have done, and they did it, and they did that. And the Trudeau government literally didn't conceive that being a thing. How do they not even conceive that? Because it's so obvious, but this is the case. So anyway, fast forward, we've gone so far into this. After opting to remove news content from its platforms, a study from the Media Ecosystem Observatory at the University of Toronto and McGill found that Facebook has seen no loss in usership, despite an overwhelming negative impact on Canadian news outlets. So people didn't go away from Facebook; they just stopped seeing news on Facebook, and not entirely. And this actually kind of gets into it, because we found little evidence that Facebook's usage has been impacted by the ban. After the ban took effect, the collapse of Canadian news content production and engagement on Facebook did not appear to substantially affect users themselves, the study read. However, the ban undoubtedly had a major impact on Canadian news. Local news outlets have been particularly affected by the ban, while large national news outlets were less reliant on Facebook for visibility and able to recoup some of their Facebook engagement regardless. Hundreds of local news outlets have left the platform entirely, effectively gutting the visibility of local news content. So people, and where's the best place to get your local news? Well, probably on your favorite social media site that tracks where you are. This is why they have geotags, so that you'll get better advertising. Some local companies will be advertised at you. Your local news will be provided to you. All of this stuff. But it's just unbelievable that this is what they did. Now, this sucks for independents like the Western Standard. And this is why, like, I try to share what they're talking about so people see it as well, and give people links so they can go without the link tax. Go check it out for themselves. The study analyzed the 987 Facebook pages of Canadian news outlets, 183 personal pages of politicians, commentators, and advocacy groups, as well as 589 political and local community groups. The study found that the Facebook pages of Canadian political influencers experienced neither a pickup nor a downturn in engagement. Hello. You're looking at one. I mean, I'm not on Facebook, but this is the I'm the equivalent, like the YouTube equivalent of what would be on Facebook. They're not seeing less engagement. They're seeing just as much, because they're not considered news agencies. And this is the thing that affects this bill. Now, Facebook groups dedicated to discussing Canadian politics did not experience an exodus of members, nor a decline in frequency of posting. And while sharing of news links became impossible, this is why when there's a will, there's a way. This is so interesting that this is how it went down. And I mean, this is along the lines of what I was predicting. Users quickly adapted by posting screenshots of news articles. Meta's ban on news sharing in Canada does not appear to have had an adverse effect on the number of attentiveness of active Facebook users in Canada. So what does that mean? It means you can't post a link, but people would just take a screenshot of the headline and then describe it in their own words. Talk about what it was about. And here's a little trick. If you see a headline, it's asking me to sign in. Not right now. If you see a headline and it's a screenshot, I see these all the time on Twitter, because people don't want to put the link, so they'll just put a screenshot. What you do is you just type the headline into Google, and that article will pop up. Like it's that easy. It's that easy. And I even have a browser extension that will read it and then just like copy paste. This is how you check that. I really recommend, if you see a screenshot of an article, don't believe it. Check it. Check that it's a real article, because people do this all the time for a myriad of different reasons. But this is the thing that people do. And again, this is what I do on this channel. It's all about making sure people are getting the correct news. Like this is what we talk about. And this is actually why I was invited to this event. I'm going to plug the event because it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to this. But this is the Reclaiming Canada conference. This is going to be taking place June 21st to 23rd, 2024. That's it's about a month away. So we're going to be all meeting at this place in Victoria, British Columbia, and there's a great list of speakers that will be at this event. Yours truly included, and everybody who's a fan of Marty, because Marty frequents this channel quite often, and he's a big name on Twitter. He'll be there. Lots of names that you'll recognize, of course. Looking forward to it. If you have the time and you want to get out to it, make sure you grab yourself a ticket. Let me grab the link to that. If you're able to, get yourself out there and do that. Is that the right link? Did it just shorten my link? Hold on. Is that the... Yeah, that's the reclaiming... Yeah, okay. So that's that. So there we go. Get yourself over there if you can. But yeah, this is crazy. The people who are suffering in this whole ordeal, where'd that go? Here's the story. The irony or injustice, from the Western Standards perspective, is that the Online News Act was aimed at protecting smaller news outlets. That's, of course, everything that they say, assume the opposite. Because, in fact, the big subsidized media organizations were the ones that came out on top. National news outlets lost about 64% of engagement they previously had via Facebook users, while local news outlets lost about 85% of their Facebook engagement, the study said. About half of all local news outlets completely quit posting on Facebook within 4 months of the ban. Western Standard does not accept federal funding and instead relies on subscriptions and advertising to support its operations. Now, ironically, this is one of my predictions. So it's Canadian news companies, not news in general. So my prediction is I feel like a lot of these good writers who write like for these publications are going to start writing for American publications, talk about Canadian news stories, and this would be a loophole to the whole thing. Talk about Canadian stories from an American publication, and then you'll be able to share it on Facebook. It's a way around it. It's possibly a thing that could get us around this whole thing. Now let's get into the next story, because I've been talking too much about all this other stuff. I want to make sure I'm catching up with the chat. So just holy cow, I'm scattered. I'm all over the place. Trish Prue, member for 19 months. I'm looking forward to going and seeing you again and meeting Marty and Tamara. I hope to get to meet some fellow Clydesters. That'd be cool. The last time in Calgary, when we went to that event, Marty and myself, we did an after party meetup, and that was huge. And Marty just recently did a meetup with a bunch of people, and it was even larger. So yeah, definitely looking forward to this upcoming thing, because it's just gonna be fantastic. Anyway, let's get into this. Masks. when did you think I'd be saying that again? Oh, this stuff's just the slow creep of this stuff. CTV News Calgary, I saw this morning. Masks work. New research confirms effectiveness in protecting against respiratory infections. Of course, the community notes, great thing here on Twitter. False. Many studies prove masks do not stop various particles. False. A peer-reviewed study demonstrates that masks do not effectively protect against COVID-19. This is and of course other people sharing older studies to refute claims of a new study. This news story is not about an effective change of the study, blah blah blah. We already know that you're not going to get around the fact that particles are coming in all over the place. You're not saving yourself from contracting these things. But why are they talking about this kind of stuff? Why is this on the news? Well, we have unvaccinated healthcare workers terminated for refusing to obey government pandemic orders. Won't be returning to work anytime soon in British Columbia. Now, this is the last holdout, Bonnie Henry, making sure that people who refused the jab cannot go back to work. Every other province, I believe, has allowed their medical workers to go back to the setting. I don't think if you were, I often ask this one. If you were given a choice, like ask a doctor this. So if someone didn't take the COVID-19 shot back 2 years ago, or whenever it first came out, they're barred from going to work. But why would you take an old vaccine now for a strain that doesn't even exist? That's an interesting question, wouldn't it be? I'd love to pose that to some doctors. Anyway, this is another article from True North talking about this. But why is this all in the news? Why is this kind of stuff popping up in the news right now? Well, it's because, well, maybe they're ramping up for more stuff. This is from Odessa Orwitz. Watch this separate 45-second clip where Theresa Tam of Canada Health laughs about cats and birds flu messaging. Next up, the infamous Bonnie Henry of BC Health Authority laughs with glee about shutting down farms and people's livelihoods due to her belief that mink farmers were a COVID risk. RE Zoom meeting leak about where to test for bird flu. Now, this is a Zoom meeting. I can give a link in the chat for the entirety of it. This was a Zoom meeting that got leaked, and there's a whole hour-long meeting. You can go check that out for yourself. But here's an interesting clip from this. Odessa put on Twitter.
I don't know who messages on that. I don't know who messages on that, but I also know that there's a gap. We always seem somehow left with holding the bag, as it were, on the pets. So I'm assuming farm cats are pets. So we do have to think about that as well in terms of messaging. Yes, there's a whole other.
Can I add one other thing? Sorry, Teresa.
Yes.
On a positive note, we shut down mink farms in BC, as you may know. Ontario, be aware, you still have them, and they launched a lawsuit against us that was just thrown out yesterday. So.
So laughing, there was no one else laughing about that. Shutting down mink farms because of threats of more boogeymen essentially out there. Now, it doesn't end there. More clips are coming out about this.
The purpose of the call is really to bring together the 4 public health agencies, the public health agency and the 3 provincial ones, at the start of what we think might be an interesting moment in the HPAI trajectory, the avian influenza H5N1, really taking into account the lessons learned about enhanced surveillance, epidemiologic studies, and scientific endeavors.
We had an overview from CFIA of the enhanced poultry surveillance, as well as some of their plans related to cattle and milk, and Dawn will speak to that. And
enhanced poultry surveillance, like what are we even on about?
And we also had a presentation from the UK Health Security Agency around their asymptomatic human surveillance pilot, which has been ongoing for a number of months, and their lead investigator presented. We do intend on upping the tempo of those meetings. Dawn, I would invite you to chime in on some of the enhanced surveillance activities going on by CFIA and also our existing instruments for that.
Don Shepherd, Vice President for Infectious Diseases and Vaccination Programs, PHAC, outlines why they need to develop an assay for H5N1 to get everything ready in the event that some testing comes back positive.
Good morning, colleagues. For those who don't know me, Don Shepherd. I'm the Vice President for the Infectious Diseases and Vaccination Programs branch at the agency. And the big questions are how far to go and in what populations, and then with what techniques, and whether this is a molecular-based program, molecular plus serosurveillance. In the serosurveillance space, there's lots of technical questions about, is there an assay? What kind of an assay? How robust is it? How do you validate an assay in the absence of of serum from humans with H5N1 disease, which, as we all know, we don't have a large number of, and we have no access to that serum from people with bovine exposures, at least at this point. So a lot to be worked out in that space, and a lot of conversations and work going on to develop that. As a minimum, we feel protocol development, having everything ready in the event that.
Now, so devil's advocate, you'd say, well, it's their job to be prepared for these things. Like if these things do occur, this is the whole point of these agencies existing. But we know what they did the last time around, and it was detrimental to people. And they did the wrong things, shutting people down, masking people up, masking children, telling them that they can't go to school, lots of detrimental effects from what actually went down. And we know we've been lied to. And this is the main thing. This is a great one from Vesper D. He put this one out there. This is back in April 12th, 2022. MP Derek Sloan in 2021 on CPAC, demonstrating what a cover-up looks like in the middle of a pandemic that the Liberal Party pushed. He, via whistleblower, states how hospitals inflated the numbers artificially while mainstream media lied to everyone. Is this coming down the pipe again from the same organizations that did it before?
One of the first whistleblowers to reach out to me was a concerned nurse who has spent over 20 years working in a hospital in my riding of Hastings, Lennox, and Addington. For her own protection, I will not name her today. When she reached out to my office, it was to inform me that the local hospital she worked in was experiencing very low numbers of COVID patients. That is, until they took in many patients from Toronto hotspots, which artificially raised the number of COVID patients in our community in a way that was not accurately reflected in the local media reports to the public. It made it look like locally we had a lot more active cases than we truly had. This type of fear-mongering in media reports has been a major issue of concern throughout this pandemic. Even worse, this nurse informed me that many of the sick patients had in fact already been vaccinated. This was not something we were hearing from our local health officials in local media reports. Even worse, this honest and diligent nurse was afraid to say anything publicly because the College of Nurses of Ontario was threatening nurses who spoke out with what they were personally witnessing in their hospitals. Anecdotal stories such as this came in with several frontline medical professionals reaching out to me with each passing day. It gets worse. On the whistleblower file, things drastically changed on April 30th, 2021. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, known as CPSO, issued a dire statement threatening any doctor who spoke out about what they were witnessing on the front lines of our hospitals, in their own clinics, and in our communities.
That's terrible.
The purpose of governing bodies like the CPSO is to protect the public, not to stifle legitimate scientific inquiry or dissent by professional doctors.
And then this is the crazy part. This is the thing that people don't remember. This is a great one. Ryan Garrettson tweeted out, 54 seconds worth watching.
I can't believe we're all walking around in Canada as if the last 4 years didn't just happen, as if they didn't freeze the bank accounts of people who donated to what was at the time a legal protest. And whether you agree with whether it's legal or not, it was. And also now the courts have found that the use of the Emergencies Act was illegal. So these are all facts. There's nothing emotional here. These are facts. But here's actually the deeper problem with all of this, is that if you agree with the taking away of people's access to money, which means their rent, their mortgage, their food, their survival, because they support or say the wrong thing, then I've got a really bad news for you, is that deep in your own psyche, in your own body, there is now a fear that if you ever say the wrong thing or support the wrong thing, they can take everything away from you.
Yeah.
I can't believe
that at the end of the day is exactly it. And this is why I've been saying this for a long time. The more the government centralizes, the more it usurps power and removes the people's liberties or has the ability to remove people's liberties, the more people are going to be clamoring for that power. It creates more of a divide in society, rather than, everybody having liberties, living under the rule of law, and you do you, I'll do me, we're good, okay? But no, the more that this manifests, the more you're going to have a situation where people feel it's necessary to clamor for power. My guy's got to be in. If it's not my guy, I can't. Your guy's going to take away my rights, and the other side feels the same about your guy, going to take away their rights. And this is why the government shouldn't have this kind of power. It should be largely powerless to limit people's liberties, take away people's rights, take away, lock people down, tell them they have to stay in their home, tell them they have to take a particular medicine, or else they can't work or travel or do any of these things. This is where it's vital. So getting into more of this. So Justin Trudeau put out on Twitter saying conservative ethics abuses have shaken Canada's faith in Parliament. It's time to raise the bar on accountability. I'm just joking. This isn't recent. No, this was from October of 2013. That's correct. Yeah, no, he doesn't have any sort of accountability. Not at this point. Not at all, including this story that's just coming out. Trudeau's promised made in Canada vaccine plant hasn't produced any shots. Well, where's the accountability in this stuff? 4 years after the plant was first pitched, not a single vial of vaccine has rolled off the line. Isn't that interesting? How much money was made on this one? The publicly owned business, Biologics Manufacturer Center, BMC, was quickly on National Research Council owned land at the site of a former animal vaccines plant, thanks to cash injection of nearly $130 million from you, the taxpayer. You guys paid for that. And it's just like any one of these government programs. But are we going to see any accountability from this group? I seriously doubt it. Here we have Cat Canada putting it out on X saying, Foreign Interference Commissioner says the Liberal government is redacting and withholding cabinet documents, preventing her from fulfilling her job. Yeah, this is the one, the number two, actually. Number two. What's her name? Hoog? I'll have to click the article here. The one who's overseeing the commission to look into interference in our elections from China. This is crazy. Foreign Interference Commissioner notes that the Liberals are withholding documents. It comes after Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc assured that the Commission into Foreign Interference would have all relevant cabinet documents, even if sensitive information couldn't be publicly disclosed. Despite this promise, the government has invoked cabinet confidentiality to withhold and redact certain records, including the Privy Council office, which answers directly to the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. As reported by the Globe and Mail, Justice Hogue, I don't know how you pronounce that, Hogue, noted in her May 3rd report the discussions as to the application of these privileges is ongoing. The PCO confirmed that 9% of the 33,000 documents given to the inquiry contained redactions. Now, what we know from the POEC, which was the inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act, the documents that were redacted, it turns out that a bunch of them are illegally redacted. And I say illegally redacted because I'm referring to documents that are not subject to redactions. They're not subject to, they were claiming cabinet confidence with members who were not in the cabinet. This is not how the law works. What do we got? Oog. Oog. Is that how it's pronounced? Oog? You don't, because you don't pronounce the H's in French. Sorry. That sounds awful. I'm not trying to make fun of her name. She's, anyway, even if she is trying to do her job correctly, she's not getting the information that is required to actually do this. And it's funny, this whole thing is a mess with China, but China is really seriously trying to do us damage. This is a great clip from Jason James' podcast. Again, you can check out the full thing. But Sam Cooper explains how China purposely destabilizes weak nations like Canada through the import of fentanyl, cultural Marxism, money laundering, and other illicit financial channels.
South Pacific, in terms of, using international Chinese mafias to target governments, especially, weak.
Lots of buffering tonight. This is what happens when you have your mobile studio set up. Let's do a hard refresh on this one, see if it pops up again.
Using international Chinese mafias to target governments, especially, weaker governments. And unfortunately, Canada, I believe, is now falling into that, South Pacific.
Boo. And this is a Twitter thing, unfortunately. Is Twitter down? Is that what's going on here? Is Twitter down? We'll find out. Anyway, sad. That was a good clip, but I can't play it. So womp.
Island zone where China is trying to tune, as one of my
oh, come on. I get to think
Pentagon friends said, tune their operations of how far can they bring countries like Canada or countries like Palau or, some of these other South Pacific islands, African nations, into the orbit of Beijing through using illicit financial channels, both to fund, election interference operations, to boost Chinese.
Oh, bummer. It's just, that's not happening. That is not happening. Not tonight, folks. Sorry about that. Let's get the chat back in here. Just waiting. I've got a couple of guests coming in tonight, and I'm just waiting on Alex. And you guys know him as the amazing Zoltan. Just waiting for him to join the room, and he's also bringing a guest to talk about what's happening in Vancouver and largely around the world at the moment. And it looks like I have an Alex, a silhouette of Alex. We'll get into that. We'll figure this out. And again, for you guys, I'm packing up because we're doing this big move. So apologies for any of the things that are janky and clunky. Lee Rich says Clyde's piano is creeping up to him. I had to get close to it because I'm not in my studio anymore. This isn't the studio. This is my garage. So I'm here for a wee bit still now. So I'm gonna play this clip. So this is a great clip that Alex actually just or the amazing Zoltan just published, and this is a bit of an explainer, and I got a couple of guys to come in and talk about what's actually happening here. But this will be a good intro, and it'll help me set up for bringing everybody in and making this work. But this is about these protests that are happening across Canada, and some are calling occupations or what. I'll let them describe it because they know much more about it. Before we get into this, I've got a couple of super chats. Diane Sylvain with $20 super chat. Trudeau got a legal opinion one day after he invoked the Emergencies Act, and this was by the ATIP by MP from the CBC. It was all redacted, and my former boss signed it. Imagine the pressure on what to write on a legal opinion after Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And then another one that disappeared. Come on. Oh, from Diana again, another $20 super chat. Hi, Clyde. Pandemic 2.0 is not a surprise, always threatening more. It's the fear, the control, and cabal attempt at their depopulation agenda. We will not comply. We will have to not speak moistly again. Damn is evil. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. Michael, member for 12 months, says, breaking news, Tam's clam tested positive for bird flu. Lockdown's imminent. Oh man, keep it a little more tame than that. Thanks for the comment and being a member for a whole year. That's amazing. Thank you so much. All right, let's get into this and then we'll get into this discussion because I think this is an interesting topic and I want to learn more about it and what people are saying about these things. So this is a great introducer. And then we'll get into the conversation.
We were talking to some podcasters about.
Oh, is this all of the internet? You can't be serious. You can't be serious. Is this all the internet? Let me fix some things here. Really? Everything's buffering on me right now. I hope it's experiencing interruptions. Find out why. Check your internet. Maybe your internet's a potato. What is going on? Bear with me, folks. I'm gonna make this stuff work. What I'm gonna have to do is close a ton of tabs for stuff that we've already talked about. Get my bandwidth back here and make sure that my computer is not experiencing this insanity. And then we'll get back to that clip and do a refresh. And hopefully things work better this time. Looks like it's loading, so let's get to it.
Talking to some podcasters about whatever the fuck this happens to be. So they were saying that there's kind of like this COVID toilet paper group thing going on here. COVID occurred during the most impressionable time of these kids' lives. Right. So that Kafka-esque thing where they're all wearing masks, it's almost a return to the womb of COVID.
Either I'm not fully getting what you guys are putting down, or you guys haven't fleshed it out enough. But it sounds like there could be something there. And it, like you guys are saying, at such a pivotal time of development. It is interesting because when we were reading the thing, the rules, that's the one that stood out to me. And it made, I don't know, my first reaction was a sadness.
Mm-hmm.
But you had a different connection to it, right? That might say they might have had growing up, right?
And it was the one that seemed out of place. I'm like, what? Are you serious? And again, yeah, for sure. I never grew up with masks. You know, that was not a part of my development. Yeah. As far as you got to be a
We were
you got to be afraid, you know, that kind of thing. But it's got to affect it somehow, as far as making that connection of how it affects it and how, because it obviously enters in. How couldn't it?
With the convoy protest, it was a lot of boomers.
Right.
And what were they doing? Right. They were also returning to the womb of their time between 18 and 21. It was a bush party. They were listening to classic rock, you know, dancing to Do the Locomotion. And right, like protests, I think that they can
the shape of our youth.
They take on the shape. Oh, that's very profound, actually.
Yeah, no, that's a good. Now you're making some connections with your.
So we are staging very top secret operation ski mask, where we are going to be leaving a remote noise device.
Okay, this is getting difficult to to watch as a video that keeps buffering. I hope I hope the stream's okay and the stream's going through. It says it's excellent on my end, so we'll have to run with that. But I want to introduce my two guests tonight. One I know, and you guys know, he's been on the show before. His name's Alex. He's the amazing Zoltan on X. And the other one I'm going to have to be introduced to by the amazing Zoltan. Hey, welcome to the show, guys. Thank you for coming on to discuss this.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Alex, thanks for bringing a friend. Who have you brought on the show tonight?
So this is my friend Daryl, and him and I feel very differently about the issues surrounding the Palestine protest. So we actually attended together in good faith. My intention was to show the kids that people could have a civil debate, even if they disagreed on the subject. And unfortunately, that was not a success.
Okay. So I'm not here to host debates, but more discussions, and like it's not really. I don't do internet blood sports. I'm not a fan of trying to get somebody in a position where they feel like they're on the spot. But different points of view is really good to engage with, and I think that this is fantastic. So what side what's the discussion here? A little bit of a backgrounder, because the video didn't work very well. Alex, could you just explain what was like a synopsis of what was being put forward there?
Oh, sure. So I came in with the assumption. Well, first of all, I want to just make one thing. So this isn't a land acknowledgement, but it is like a sensitivity acknowledgement.
Okay.
So I have a bit of a terrible Kamala Harris tendency to use nervous laughter and humor as a way of navigating really complex and sensitive problems. And what we're doing is we're talking about something that's like been a human tragedy for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And I was talking to Vesper this morning, and he pointed out, I think quite wisely, that nobody's innocent except for kids, and there are children, civilians, that are dying in this. So I want to keep things light. Normally I wouldn't say that, but you spent the first hour, Clyde, talking about trans kids killing themselves, so I feel like I can say that without pulling all the air out of the room.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. And just for people to know, like I don't necessarily have a dog in this fight, because I come from a libertarian sort of sensibility, non-interventionist kind of like that. That's my advocacy for policy. If someone were to come in and attack Canada, I would be absolutely all about, well, let's go fight a war and win it. But brief and all energy towards that, not these long-standing endeavors of conflict. I think it's not a great thing. But this is more about hearing your guys' point of view than me giving mine. So, sorry, I didn't catch your name.
So this is Daryl. Sorry, so to introduce my friend Daryl, this is Daryl. Daryl, take the floor.
Daryl, so how is it that you and Alex know each other, and where's the difference of opinion here?
So Alex and I met about a year ago through a mutual friend, and really the difference of opinion, we just happened to fall on different sides of the Israel-Gaza conflict. Getting into the weeds for like probably the history of the state of Israel, it's a complicated thing, but I think one of the best things that I liked about Alex and that he brought forth when we went to the protest was exactly this, to try to have a dialogue that I'm sure has been done before, but at the same time, as Alex will probably say in a bit, there were some interesting rules and perspectives of the protest organizers that I had issue with, I guess is the way to say. But I'll let Alex go for a little bit and then just go from there, if that's all
Well,
right.
I have a question. Like, were you involved with the protest? Were you there with the people who were, either occupying or staying in this area, staying in tents? Were you involved with them?
Oh, yeah. So I should mention I have no proper affiliation with UBC or with any specific camp. I've been a supporter of BDS for about 20 years. I'm a former student myself from UVic. Was involved in a lot of protests and different things at the time. But largely, I'm just an activist, wannabe journalist, and wannabe podcaster guy. So thanks for letting me be on.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah, no problem. Absolutely. All right, Alex, take it away.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah, so as I was saying, like there's nothing funny about the issue, but the protests are funny.
we get that. So,
yeah,
a little bit of background. So Alex and I have been discussing these protests for a while, and I'm of the opinion that a lot of what's going on has nothing to do with Palestine. It has to do with a lot of people just want to get out and protest something. Some of the disruptions that we've seen in other places, you see the same faces that you see at other protests like Black Lives Matter, these kinds of things. And you see a lot of people bringing in their own issues like communism or things like that, which have nothing to do with Palestine. And it makes me kind of intrigued by this. So like, what in particular is hilarious or funny about this particular group in British Columbia at the university?
I can start, Alex, if you want.
Please.
Yeah, the first thing that was kind of odd was there was this, Alex, if I recall, we asked to be allowed into the camp, and there was a meeting going on, and so it wasn't the best timing, so they said. But the rules kind of shifted or changed despite them having it listed on a board. And then were not interested in any kind of dialogue at all. So, I mean, primarily the camp, I assume, is a pro-Palestine in support of Palestine. But Alex specified his position and in good faith and wanted to have a dialogue. And there was just very little interest in it. And then the mask thing and then a couple other things.
I found that crazy to hear
again.
that people, that was one of the main things. You couldn't enter the protest without a mask on. What does that have to do with anything?
So I think it has a lot to do with everything, in fact. So my theory, which I was trying to espouse in that YouTube video, which didn't play, but what happens with protests generally is that they take on the shape of people's youth. And this is true of every protest. So if you look at the convoy protest, as I said, it was like a big Bush party because the protesters were baby boomers. And that's what they did during the peak of their lives between 18 and 21. During the Vietnam protests, it was the same thing. They were listening to Woodstock music. During the Iraq protests, it was garage bands because it was Gen Xers. This is nothing unique. What I think is interesting about the Palestine protest is that a lot of those Kafkaesque elements, the wearing of masks, the censorious attitude of no debate, that actually derives from these kids' desires to go back to COVID. And this is completely foreign to every other generation. It's unique to this one because while we all found COVID to be this incredibly depressing and inconvenient time, to these kids, it was actually the best time of their lives.
Can I push back in there, Alex? Or sorry to interrupt you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to bounce that theory off of you.
Yeah, I also thought the mask thing. See, I was a student 20 years ago, and so when the Iraq War took off, that was sort of the primary thing. But at that time, and I mentioned this before, you could protest and there wasn't a fear of being canceled or being asked to not protest or support something at work to the extent that I see today. So I don't know if it's as much as what you think is like a throwback to a comfort zone for some of the youth, or if it's more just there is a difference in this particular conflict that, I mean, there's nobody with the power of AIPAC or just different Israel lobbies that have such the power that they do and are able to cancel people that, you know, have a dissenting view. I think that's a lot to play into it as well, but what you're saying is valid as well.
What I find interesting about this is it's not raging against the machine, which usually protests are. This is raging for the machine. This is actually like, obey the rules, govern me harder, daddy, like get in line. And we want, they're protesting against the general public, in my opinion, is what it looks like. What do you feel is the real what's the, like, it doesn't feel like there's a real message behind any of this stuff other than obey.
Well, I would argue, Clyde, that every protest takes on the shape of raging against the machine, and these kids are too. So, you know, when every protest prior to this one, it was a lot of drinking and partying. That's a symbol of raging against the machine. These kids are taking ADHD meds and playing Mario Kart in their tent in silent, and like that's their raging against the machine.
I think there's some truth to what you're saying, Alex, but at the same time too, it is a different landscape today. So you're the idea of wearing masks as to go back to the comfort zone. You know, there's a very real issue. Like I work in a camp job in a remote gold mine, and I've been asked not to wear I Stand with Gaza shirt, or there's a lot of kind of like quiet, silent censorship that's unspoken but is just assumed, right? And I don't recall that in the past. So I think there's more to that. But I think like you both have said too, like organization has always been atrocious from any kind of protesting that I've seen. And I mean, in the modern history too, if you just look at some of the big ones, the Black Lives Matter or Occupy Wall Street, I mean, those quickly evaporated into chaos. I don't know if that's the case here exactly. There seems to be, like, I find the message, I mean, my bias though too, is just ceasefire, end the genocide, you know, stop the conflict and shine a light onto the apartheid state of Israel, I think. But I speak for myself. I don't have an affiliation to these camps directly.
I don't know if anybody's arguing for a genocide or arguing for. I think this becomes like a misnomer. Is like people are accusing the other side of one thing. Oh, you know, building up straw men about each side, and then say, you know, you support these things that, you know, obviously those are abhorrent things to support, and that's not what people are actually supporting. So I mean, this is a hard one. This is why I think this debate is so difficult to get into without becoming inflammatory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's.
But if there's no discussion, there's no argument.
Oh, I agree. The discussion is great. I don't even know what to say when people are making like accusations of you know, the other side's evil or something like that. It's like, okay, well then they're just evil, so they got to go, right? Is that the answer, or like where do we go from there?
If there's one thing, Clyde, one thing I do kind of notice. The history of Israel, the history of Palestine, it's both complex and not. Like in a really simplified way, I think it's just one of the greatest tricks the devil's ever pulled, in a sense of just the ability to obfuscate a very kind of obvious, like, settler colonial style project, which is the state of Israel, in my opinion. The idea that that's complex and so it's difficult to stand on a side or not get inflamed, I think honestly is the work of a lot of Israeli propaganda and just fueled by mainstream media, clickbaiting and whatnot. Like this, at the end of the day, when you see pictures of the conflict, there's brutality on both sides. There's all kinds of things, but it's not a one side, or it's not a wash style thing, in my opinion. It's a very obvious, military with the support of the world's largest empire versus the people that really don't have that much, and like 50-year-old missiles. And yes, their leaders have some money, and it's an organization, but they're under occupation, right?
So I would like to push back on that with a story that we experienced together. So Clyde, when we first arrived on the third day of the protest, we encountered our first counter protester, and it was an Indigenous person. And they came by and they started ripping down Palestine flags and ripping down signs. And I said, why are you doing that? And they said, well, because these people are claiming that they're on occupied lands. They've already set that term of engagement, but they're protesting an occupation that's happening all the way on the other side of the world rather than the one that they claim and acknowledge is happening underneath their feet.
Well, that's actually a really good point, because I never follow along with this. This all started happening when I got back from Japan, or like while I was in Japan for 3 years. These land acknowledgements, and I started going to public events, and they do these land acknowledgements. Like, what is this? I'm asking people, what's this all about? Oh yeah, we're just claiming that the natives own the land. Well, is anyone giving it back to them? Nope, no, we're not doing that. So. That's a really good point. So a native or Indigenous person, whatever is I'm not trying to offend people, but it's like when names keep changing, it gets confusing. So
yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
however they'd like to be referred to.
It is kind of interesting that that would be brought up as a point from.
And she yelled at me and swore at me, and I was the only one she swore at, because obviously she wasn't allowed in either. So I was the only one within earshot. I said, why are you yelling at me? I'm not even a part of the protest. Jesus, I just got here. But I have some more. So some more reasons that I think that the protest, I think, is deserving of mockery. Another one is that they're calling for peace and resistance at the same time.
Well,
I don't understand how those two things, I've got more. So that's also expressed as the intifada on the one hand and the ceasefire on the other hand. I don't believe that those two views can be held simultaneously without being illogically incoherent. I have more. Another one is Queers for Palestine and Trans People for Palestine. Israel is the only country in the region that recognizes the minority rights of trans and queer people. So I don't know how that one came about. And then, of course, protesting an occupation while acknowledging you're engaging in an occupation. All of that, I think it's rife with cognitive dissonance, the protest, and that's why they can't debate. I think there's something much deeper going on psychologically that has absolutely nothing to do with COVID. And I think that's true of most college protests. I don't think that these children are children. I don't want to say children. I don't want to be condescending, but I don't think that these kids are that much different than any other generation that engaged in campus culture, protesting things they know nothing about. It's normal. They're hormonal teenagers, and it doesn't take much to get them riled up. And I think that there's something else going on that has nothing to do with Palestine.
Can I answer one of those?
Jump in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the one, what was the first one, Alex? I just, my memory's not so great.
Oh, there were a lot. Maybe the occupation.
Both being in favor. So asking for a ceasefire, and you were saying like the intifada. So like the intifada just means resistance, right? And I think that's like something that's fairly simple that gets easily confused, and intentionally so. I mean, really, I think that was your issue that day, if I recall. But also, like, is it fair to assume now, like, does the clarify of the terms help with that, or is it just something more for you?
Well, maybe I can add a bit to this. So I think that
please,
because I hear from both sides of this one, and you hear people from the Palestinian side saying, it's just a resistance. We're resisting against the Israeli occupation of their area. Where the other side, or I'll hear it from other people saying that no, the resistance is Jews on Muslim land. And that's another way it can be translated. And this is where like a term that I think came up before in another stream, the term shibboleth. It's when you say certain words or certain phrases and they become associated with one political group, or it doesn't have to be even a political group. You just get tied to this phrase. So or they'll have completely different meanings for a set of words that go together, a phrase, that kind of thing. So when people hear Antifada or they hear resistance against Israel, they think, Israeli supporters might say, "Oh, that means they want Jews off all Muslim land," because that was at one point an actual thing that was pushed forward, and then. From the other side, it's like, no, we're resisting an occupation from a world superpower, and we just have this little strip of land. We just leave us alone.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be neutral in all of this. I'm not.
Oh no.
Yeah, no.
Totally understand. It really is just so difficult to go around. Maybe I'll just be quiet and let someone say something.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. What were some of the other points that you brought up, Alex?
Actually, I did have one. It's just an analogy, but Alex, I think you would enjoy this too. This is from a friend of mine. But so apparently, fairly recently, Nick Cave was playing in Israel, and he took a lot of crap for it. And this will tie into exactly what we're talking about. And my friend who plays music was saying something along the lines like he's a Nick Cave fan, and he was pretty annoyed at the kind of liberal style treatment he figured he was getting. And at the time, I actually thought, well, if you have something to say in this realm, then maybe it's not a great idea to play in Israel. Like, I understand that's how apartheid works, or that's how BDS works to an extent. But then he made the point of like, well, can I play in New York? Can I play in Canada? This is all unceded land and different things. And my only retort to that was just, but we're in a later stage of the current genocide of North America, so to speak, right? Like, it's not to diminish it or say it wasn't as barbaric. It's just, it's so later, like we're not currently bombing the Indigenous people here, although there's still a lot of, horrors and atrocities with that too. But I think that distinction makes it somewhat more understandable why you'd want to boycott something that's happening in real time right away. And sorry if I've just train railed this whole thing.
No, not at all.
It's all part
Maybe
of the
that ties it
discussion.
in. I thought it was something interesting to think on and ponder about.
I would like to return on 2 points there. So there is a lot of buzzword usage that goes on with these protests, and you've used two words that I take umbrage with. The
Awesome.
first one is apartheid. So to call Israel an apartheid state is patently inaccurate. I will acknowledge that there's, of course, mass human suffering in Palestine, and that there is a group of people who are stateless, and that's horrible and unfair, and I would like to see that be rectified as quickly as possible. But within the state of Israel, it is enshrined within the Constitution that everybody is treated equally. 20% of the population is Arab. A higher percentage of that is Muslim. They have a proportional representation in the Israeli parliament. Arabic is an official language. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter if you're gay. It doesn't matter if you're trans. Everybody has equal rights in Israel, and that is not true in most of the Muslim states that surround Israel. So to call Israel an apartheid state, I believe it's just a gross misuse of the term.
No, I mean, here's why it is. First of all, Arab Israelis cannot marry Jewish Israelis under their own law. That's under Israeli law. I mean, I'm a bit rusty on some of the facts, but I mean, you have South Africa, probably the most significant voice on apartheid, calling Israel an apartheid state. The Geneva Conventions clearly state what it is. It's like, I don't know, I could go on and on, but I'll just leave it at a couple points for now in the sake of dialogue.
Well, I would like to ask the question, why is this a Canadian issue? Because I mean, I typically talk about
That's a
Canadian.
great question.
Yeah, like I typically talk about Canadian their money. Well, where's the money? Like where and who's?
We pay our taxes. We're supporting on the Israel side, right?
Well, we're also supporting it on the Hamas side as well. I mean, war is big business for both sides. That's
Fair.
I posted earlier today, the combined net worth of the three leaders of Hamas is $11 billion. That's greater than Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and Vince McMahon put together. Where does the vast majority of that wealth come from? From us.
How much
From
wealth
us.
do you
No,
think
it does.
is
It comes
sitting
from
in Tel Aviv?
humanitarian aid. It comes from taxpayers in the West who pay humanitarian aid. And what is the coin of the realm for humanitarian aid? Suffering. So these leaders who have made billions of dollars, they're not living in Gaza. They're not sitting next to the people being bombed. They're in Qatar.
Yeah, but you can say that about
living a life of opulence. It's not unlike the African dictators in post-colonial Africa, the Mobutus. You know, that it's actually following in a tradition of post-colonial states. You know, kleptocracies.
we could just call that human nature, I think, right? Largely, you're going to have rich people don't necessarily fight conflicts. It's usually the poorest that end up doing that, as far as I can see.
There's a lot of things that are. This is a lot of things that are human
But-
nature.
but-
I don't think liberty is not even a natural state of things. You know, the natural state of humanity is tribalism and subjugating each
Right.
other. To have this experiment in the West, in Canada, the United States, England, of liberty, that is such a tremendous thing.
Yeah.
And again, like this calls into question, why is this even a Canadian issue? And yeah, if it's money, then why aren't the protesters specifically saying stop all funding of this conflict, just stop all funding? And that
So another reason, Daryl, sorry, I'll let you if
by all
answer
means.
Clyde's question, because I think it's an important one. The reason it's become a Canadian issue is because Muslims now represent 1 out of every 20 Canadians. It is, aside from Punjabs and Sikhs, because they're the second largest vote bank. They're the first largest vote bank. It's the second largest vote bank in the country. That's why it's become a Canadian issue. It's really that simple.
But, well, I will call it a Canadian issue in the fact that I think it's a global and a world issue. I think I'm going to get a little Marxist on you guys here, but I think honestly, we, you know, in the West, we enjoy a quality of life, right? That really does come from the exploitation of a lot of the global South and other places. I mean, that again, that just goes back to tribalism. But in the particular case here of Israel-Palestine, it's just how barbaric, how real time it is, how we can see it all. I mean, even in Vietnam, they got a hold on some of those videos coming out, right? They largely put a stop to it. Even Iraq wasn't as gruesome, like never ending, like this current conflict is. And I think that brings a little bit more of more attention. But I'm going to be very honest here too. I think the power, like without getting into tropes and anti-Semitism and things like it, Israel is a big player. It's a foothold in the region for the U.S. empire, right, and for the British, right. It's largely its creation is as much as it has to do with Jewish people. I mean, there is the fact that like the most Orthodox Jews don't believe in Israel as a state. Like Zionism goes against their Orthodox faith in that way. So I think the conflating of the religion into that too is also an intentional obfuscation. It seems to me more like it's just a U.S. empire, a West empire attempt at putting, you know, a power hold in the region, much like they've done. Pick a Latin American country, pick a South American country, pick, you know, look at the rest of the Middle East. I think there's a lot of that going on. And I just think that because of the influence of Israeli lobbies and the support that they've had almost unquestionably for so long, it just doesn't really get the same questioning that I think is a lot of people are waking up to since October 7th, unfortunately.
If I can, because we actually, I missed one of my points about the cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
So another one that I just wanted to touch upon, which is in that regard, is that it is common for leftist college students to align themselves with the oppressed minority versus the overpowering majority. And that may be true in terms of capital and in terms of influence, as you've noted, that may be true. But on a micro level, in terms of the campus and in terms of the country and actually globally, let's just keep it specific to the campus. Muslims represent a supermajority over Jews.
Sure.
It's over 20 to 1.
Okay.
So they're not representing an oppressed minority. They're actually representing the majority. They may be oppressed, and that would be for you to figure out, but they're not a minority.
Well, I mean, I don't know the demographics of the camp or UBC. I'm kind of just, I should be clear, yeah, when I'm stating just specifically Palestine, Israel. But if I understand what you're saying, because there's a larger representation of Muslim students in universities or at UBC, you think that that leads
Well, would you feel comfortable being a Jewish student walking past that encampment?
Yeah, I would have no issue with that at all. I mean, like, I've been watching a lot of the Columbia videos and different things too, and notice that there is a lot of like Jews for Palestine. There's a lot of, I mean, most of the people that I watch to inform myself happen to be Jewish too, from Glenn Greenwald, Do Dissidents. Jimmy Dore isn't Jewish, but you know, these are people that I get my news from, so to speak. Yeah, I don't think there's very much of an anti-Semitism stripe. I mean, that does always exist. If you go back to the trucker convoy that we had, the Canadian truckers, you had like the one Nazi guy with the flag, which I don't even know if he was real. And, you know, that's what everybody talks about from the mainstream, right? They just put the camera on him and have at it. But really, anyone who was at those convoys, and you would know better than I do, how small of a representation it was. Do you think, you know, like in the same way, would you feel as if you were Jewish that you would feel uncomfortable around that?
Definitely. In the same way that if I were walking through the Ottawa convoy protest and I was a vaccine doctor for Pfizer, I would feel pretty uncomfortable.
Okay.
I'd feel uncomfortable as that doctor today going forward.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. They'll probably never feel comfortable again anywhere. But yeah, I think that it's unrealistic to say that, you know, if you put yourself in a Jewish student's shoes, that you would not feel uncomfortable. For instance, I invited a number of people to be on this call today, and 2 people declined me, and one of them was Jewish, and they said specifically because they're outnumbered 20 to 1, like in their workplace and in their life. They don't feel
I can't speak for Jewish people, and I assume a lot of them do feel fear, and I understand. I think a lot of it's ginned up by the media, intentionally so. I do see a lot of like it is a tough one, you know, for sure. But I mean, my honest, pure feeling is I wouldn't feel any discomfort. I mean, we passed, I don't know if you were with us, but there was like a Jewish interfaith chapel or something that we passed by when we were going there. I'm just gonna make an assumption too, but there's probably a lot more like, are you certain of those numbers you were saying for the UBC? Or I'm just I should just admit my ignorance.
Across Canada. So the population,
I see. Okay.
The Muslim population is 1 in 20, and it's less than 1 in 100 for Jews. Yeah, which is actually fairly consistent, like across the world. There's a relative level of consistency there. It's not specific.
Well, in a really funny analogy, like the small town that I come from, Kitimat, British Columbia, it had a token Jewish family when I was growing up, and it had a token Black family. It was also a multicultural spot. But I don't think the token Jewish family felt bad. But this is kind of I'm getting into the weeds here.
Were they actually tokens? Did the city like hold them up, like look at our Jewish family, or we're just are you just saying
it's a created company town in the 50s, and so there's a large different portions of the workforce, but there really was a token Jewish family, I believe a token Black family, at least in the mid-90s and the early 2000s when I was coming of age there. But it is the truth that, yeah, there was a large Greek population, Portuguese, Filipino, just happened to be one Jewish family in this small town. And it was just kind of an interesting take, both multicultural and also, you know, lacking. Anyways, point being, I don't know if just because you're underrepresented, that's fair to say you would feel unsafe. I understand the conflict would bring a little bit more attention and can make people feel unsafe. But I think there's a lot of, if there's anything these kids do is give hugs and talk about their feelings a lot. So
well, they weren't giving me any hugs, Daryl.
yeah, but you're.
Well, I just want to I want to
I'm
chime
gonna be
in
number
here.
one.
I want to chime in here because like a recent event in Vancouver. I don't think it was at that particular protest, but a recent event had a lot of the you know. We have a nickname for them as pro wrestlers. These are the type of people that show up at all protests, no matter what. It's like, what protest's happening today? I'm coming. Which one's the left and which one's the right? I'm over there. Okay. It's like a team sport kind of game. And so they rock up and they say the most like inflammatory things. So this, I think, is where a lot of the fear comes from. At this event, there was a woman, she was screaming into a megaphone, and she was saying, "Long live October 7th." And the crowd was cheering and repeating that. And if you're a Jewish person, tell me that's not terrifying.
Correct. So Clyde, this when we saw this Indigenous person tear down the flags, this gentleman came by. And he was probably, let's say, in his late 30s or early 40s, and he was wearing a keffiyeh, and he was very, very Caucasian. He had a German accent. And I said, "Oh, did you see the counter protester?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Would you like to see it?" He goes, "Yes." So I showed it to him on my phone, and clearly it wasn't the counter protester he was expecting. He was expecting, like, some old Zionist lady, like wearing an Israeli flag dress. But it was this Indigenous person, and he goes, "Well, that's unusual. 99% of Indigenous people agree with us."
Oh, where do you get that number?
How do you know that?
You just pull that
And he
number.
goes, "Well, we haven't done a poll or anything. It's just common sense applies. It's a lot like trans people would agree with us or whatever, right?" And I said, "Well, if you did do a poll, theoretically, and 99% of them disagreed, Indigenous people, with what you're doing, would it make you feel different generally about the protest?" And we paused for 15 seconds, and then he goes, "No, all Zionists must die."
Must what? Sorry?
All Zionists must die.
Die. See, this
You guys do make the distinction between Zionism and Judaism too, right? I think that's.
Well, he just walked away. And in terms of that distinction, because Clyde and I were talking about it the other day, what is a Zionist? And its most literal base definition of Zionist is anybody that believes Israel has a right to have a state. And so if this Indigenous woman believed that, then he would be saying that she is a Zionist, she should die.
Right. Okay. Well, what if I just switch it and go back into World War II?
But I don't think, sorry, just to be clear, I don't think that's his definition of Zionist.
I see.
I think that these are terms that get floated around on university campuses like socialist, fascist, that nobody really knows what they mean. And sure. I don't think that he's a homicidal person or anything like that. I just think he's poorly informed.
Well, and I just think that's quite inflammatory to say that, like, anyone with an opinion that I don't like, because that essentially that's what it is. Like, we disagree on things, and if somebody fundamentally disagrees with a thing, they should die. Like, that's and obviously I don't think the person really does. Do you think the person actually believed that the people that disagree should die?
Well,
no.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
I wanted to ask Alex, if you just switched it, and if we just went into Germany and you just heard, a Russian, like, communist fighter, so someone saying, the distinction between, if you could understandably hear someone say all Nazis must die as opposed to all Germans must die, right? Like that wouldn't be so jarring a term to hear, like, in that time, in that context.
I think they're both jarring.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, if right, and I'm not trying to defend this all Zionists must die, and I don't know the guy and what context he said it in. But as an ideology, I would agree that is a very problematic and very Nazi-like ideology. That like,
so what do you think a Zionist is?
Well, as I understand, and again, I'm no expert, but Zionism, from my understanding, is a relatively new thing in modern history within Judaism. It was kind of largely co-opted and pushed by the British to, again, in drawing up like the area of Palestine for to have their foothold and their powers. You know, they just lost a whole bunch of power after World War II. This was kind of their take in like kind of just working with the United States. This is their way to like retain power. So I think the conflating of it into the religion, I think that's the intentional lie that's like constantly reinforced through our mainstream media. I mean, if you just look at movies like Morale, like Julian Schnabel's Morale, which from the early 2000s, that film was about his wife, I believe at the time, who was Palestinian, and her story. When they were filming that in Jerusalem, you know, they were shut down by the Israeli government, and they had different like agitators come in and speak Hebrew in areas they weren't supposed to do so. And so like there is just such a concentrated effort in suppressing any kind of message that comes out counter to the narrative of whatever it is, the Israeli state, the Zionist state, I don't know what the proper terminology for all of it is. I just know that there is a very large distinction, and it needs to be pointed out every time, because Jerry Seinfeld, I think, is just an uninformed Jewish person. I don't believe he's an actual Zionist like, say, Netanyahu is, if that makes sense.
What if he believes in the right for Israel to have its own state? He is a Zionist.
He could be. Maybe he's said so. I just get the impression from what I've seen of him recently in the news, being booed out of different commencement speeches and things like that. I mean, he's always appeared to me as a very apolitical person. But, you know, he is Jewish. He feels the need to take a side, I assume. And yeah.
Well, you have to. It was a very uncomfortable moment for me, because our mutual friends immediately yelled out, "Oh, he wants to kill you," you know.
Yeah, that feels very uncomfortable. I want to. Yeah, that's pretty uncomfortable. I mean, like I get it. Like there's like the you know joking, the jokingly, you know, bringing stuff up like, you know, helicopter rides for communists, like that's a joke. You know, for people who don't get it, like it was famous that Pinochet threw some communists out of a helicopter, and then that became the thing. Like, this is how you treat communists. But it's joking, it's tongue in cheek. Nobody wants to murder anybody. Like that's not the actual intention there. Even though, you know, you and I probably disagree a lot, because I'm very against socialism and communism and stuff. And, you know, it would actually be good to have you on the show another time to talk about that as a topic, because I think that would be fantastic. I wanna reach out to people who disagree with me, you know, on political things, and have conversations and be civil like we're being right now. Like this is the whole point of it, because people can't be civil. Now, I want to ask you both this. Like, has it occurred to either?
We'll get there, Clyde. Give us enough time, and we'll
be at each other's throats.
Faster, I'm sure.
Well, this ties into my question here. So for both of you, like, and this is the thing that's got me concerned. Is this another just divisive thing that you know, the political class today is just using to get us to be pissed off at each other over, instead of paying attention to what's going on here in Canada with real Canadian issues and occupying people's minds on a thing that's in a faraway land that, you know, divide and conquer? Do you think that this has that occurred to you at all?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the entire like pronouns trans debate. I think that is in grassroots and is ginned up as the most intentional distraction. I think it's largely to get us not talking about Israel, Gaza, or the economy, or different things. But yeah, that's definitely a factor always from power structure. 100%. That's the whole game. If you're running the show from CNN, producer, whatever, right? Your whole job is to, you know, make us talk about rainbow beer cans instead of talk about, you know, the price of houses, whatever.
Alex?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I completely agree.
Oh, fair enough. All right, we'll get to some questions from the chat here. We got Al Stewart with a $20 super chat. Says, it seems that there's more there is more to these Palestinian protests than in Canada than the actual conflict. What are the predominant ethnicities of the protesters? Fifth, sixth generation Canadians? Question mark. Foreign students from Palestine? Question mark. Like what is this? Is like the people who are these protesters, are they Palestinian, or are they Canadians who just kind of adopted this whole thing? You know, the issue du jour, you know, kind of thing.
It's a great question, and a few more hours there than Daryl. So I would like to take this one first if I can.
Sure.
And it's also something I was curious about, so I spent a lot of time observing. I would say it was about 40% Caucasian, 40% Asian, and about 20% Arab. Hard to tell because of the masks. I did not see one black student, and I haven't on any student or on any campus, anywhere. I've yet to see one, which is a curiosity.
I think you were mentioning at one point how you were astonished by how many like young I think you said Korean students were involved in
this? I mean, young Asian girls kind of difficult to pin down their nationality when they're not wearing a mask. So go with the mask plays with your guessing game. But yes, there were a lot of Asian girls, and Ezra Levant commented on that as well, because they had masked several students at UCLA, and there was a predominant amount of young Asian women. I believe it was Gavin McGinnis who posited the theory that it's a rebellion against
tiger parents,
which is interesting. Yeah.
Well, there was one day we went, Alex, there was a side protest of sorts, or a march going on downtown that I just happened to walk by a few hours later with my wife. But in any case, we should go back again, get a better look, get a better feel, because we were there briefly a few different days, but at the same time there wasn't a lot of activity, and I do know that these things are pretty fluid, right? There's a lot of change from day to day, so it would be interesting to get more. And there was I couldn't really hear because of the audio, but there was that guy we met, Abdul. Remember, he was Palestinian, Jordanian, and then the Chinese couple and the Mexican couple, and they were great. They just, none of them happened to be in the protest.
This is true. So this is a very good point. So as I mentioned, it was about 40% white, 40% Asian, maybe 20% Arab, if we're being generous. It was probably even less than that. The Arab students were the friendliest and the most willing to engage in dialogue. Many of them actually left the camp and spoke to me maskless, in good faith. And I believe the reason for that is that they actually had some knowledge of what was going on.
So I got another question from the audience. Al Stewart with a second question for $20 says, why is the mainstream media giving these Palestinian protests here in Canada so much coverage while ignoring grassroots Canadian protests about Canadian issues? So I think an example for that would be the ongoing protests. The Million March, but then the ongoing protests against the carbon tax. A lot of these things are being largely ignored, yet this is getting a ton of media attention. What do you think the reason for that is?
This one's funnier.
Are they even showing the funny part though? Like, I don't know if they are. They're ignoring that part of it.
I don't know. People like the other. It's something that's more fun to talk about over these stupid kids. I mean, I was one of those kids protesting ridiculous things when I was in university.
Do you have an opinion as well?
It was just hard to hear Alex with the audio. For some reason, I can hear you very well, Clyde. Could you just briefly say what Alex said?
Basically that it's funny, and then I laughed at that, and then you sum it up short. Alex, again, sorry. I don't know why the audio is.
It's my fault, but I appreciate it.
This one's, it's funnier.
Just because it's funnier.
That's it.
It's more of an entertaining thing. Okay.
The issue itself, I want to be very clear, it's not funny, but the protests are. they're ridiculous.
Well, they are ridiculous. That's correct. They're ridiculous. And just like a lot of these other protests that were, I think the news media latched on to the, people protesting the drag story hour thing, because that turned into a big ridiculous event. Both sides, very flamboyant, very, again, this is where we got the idea of like the pro wrestlers, because they're coming out every week and they're doing their interviews with the media, and it's like Macho Man Randy Savage from the 1980s, right? It's entertainment, and that's what the news really wants, because that gets clicks. It generates clicks.
My friends growing up, Clyde, would actually call those people jobbers. We had a name for them. The people who are sort of paid to lose, or the people that just show up for whatever, right?
Oh, right.
But in any case, to being back to what you guys, what you were saying, I think a lot of the onus should be on the organizers of the protest. I mean, it's always, if history bears anything of value, protests are so susceptible to being co-opted, infiltrated, or just, commandeered all the time, that it really, I wish I knew more about like the Vietnam protests, but I imagine there was a way more cohesive, strong focal point that was there, that you could clearly state in a few seconds from talking to somebody there what is the message, that is absent today from what I can see of the few times we visited. That being said, I think, that's a blind spot that needs to be looked at by the organizers themselves, because I think it's a very valuable, very important issue. It's just so easily convoluted into, the media clickbait that we see, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like we've lost Alex's image here for a moment. We'll see if it comes back.
The silhouette is gone.
The silhouette's gone. Another question though is, where was I with that? So I was chatting with Camille El-Sheikh. He was the organizer for the 1 million person march across Canada, and that was the one against the idea of SOGI, gender study stuff in schools. Parents are really against that, and it started with the Muslim community really stepping up and saying, no, we're not cool with this. This goes against our beliefs, and we don't want this taught to our children. So we want to be able to opt out. If you teach this stuff, fine, whatever, but we want the right to know what's happening first and foremost, and then to be able to opt out. Now that was met with, again, the same people that I see joining these protests, counter protesting against. And I was speaking with him recently, because I was asking him, like, what's going on at these protests? I don't know much about it. I've been sticking to Canadian news, asking Canadian issues, and he's like, it's been co-opted. Like what people were actually initially protesting was ceasefire. Let's end this conflict and get to, people not dying anymore. And then it was like quickly co-opted by the same people who were on the other side of us at the anti-SOGI protest, counter protesting, and now it's such a weird mix of people. And he was saying, there's the same people that were Black Lives Matter, that were smashing windows and doing all this stuff, same people. Did you see anything like this when you were there, like similar people to other protests, or the usual characters, or did you have a sense that it was not really about the main thing, like a ceasefire or whatever people originally were asking for?
Well, like I said, I didn't see anything from the 2 times I visited the UBC campus, but the general feeling of it was that it was confused from people within the camp. People outside, passersby, seemed to have a lot more focus and just thought put into what they had to say on the issue. Again, I'm going to just largely agree with you that, I mean, that is the kind of 5-hole of a protest that's always, is the most vulnerable at all times, right? It's just so easy to I don't know, you think of January 6th or something, but you can just see how easy it is to manipulate change or whatever, right? A ceasefire can quickly become a call for, I don't know, feeling comfortable in a safe space or whatever it is, whatever distraction you can come up with. And I think that's kind of a hallmark of our time, like the current time post-COVID, of just this up is down, left is right, definitions change. Yeah, I think it's very hard to get a message and stay on it, so to speak. But it's not an answer either. It's just an observation.
Yeah, it's just an observation. But no, it's good to go out and observe this this stuff. Like I'm not suggesting that you're part of it, but you've been to
Oh,
it.
no, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been to it, and so again, we're seeing some ridiculousness coming back. Alex, you're back, but
Yeah.
but because we're running long on the podcast tonight, and I just want to make sure everybody knows where to find you guys online. I'd love to have you back as well, because you said you mentioned something about your Marxism, and I largely disagree with that, and I want to have discussions with people that I can civilly, in opposition. So it would be great to have you back sometime so we can talk about other things, because I'm really into economics, and that would be a great discussion. Marx's
I would love it.
theory,
Yeah.
obviously an economic theory as well as a social theory. But where can people find you?
Myself, I'm just out in the wilderness, so don't worry about me.
Oh, you said you were a podcaster, so I'm just wondering where people can go check that out.
No, I was saying I want to be podcaster that you've now helped me out with. So this is a great first experience, we'll say.
Fair enough. If you ever get into it, I'll plug away. And of course,
cool, buddy.
Everybody knows where to find Alex, the amazing Zoltan on Twitter. Constantly plugging away, putting stuff out there, fun little edits, great content, constantly. I don't know how you do it. I mean, people say that about how you do it on YouTube, but you're doing a bang up job. You're putting a lot of quality stuff together and talking about subjects that not a lot of people are touching on. So that's something that I always want to encourage people to look into. It's like when Vice magazine was a real news organization and not just trying to put out their political ideology. So I like the gonzo journalism kind of thing. So thank you both.
Totally.
Thank you both for joining tonight. You look like you wanted to add something, Alex.
Yeah, I do. I just want to express my gratitude to both of you, of course, Clyde, for having us both. But Daryl, most of all, you, I really appreciate you coming and doing this and having conversations and perhaps showing these college students. I'll refrain from calling them kids.
No, it's very likewise. I want to extend a thanks to both you guys. But Alex, yeah, we'll definitely carry on in this vein. I think it's very productive. And Clyde, I would love to be back. And I will plug myself in this way. You could Don Pato's Musings on Substack. There you go. That's one thing for me.
Don Pato. How would you spell that, just for people?
DonPato. So Don Pato's Musings
on Substack.
It's my Substack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, everybody go check that out. Get your reading on, and before we have the next visit from Don here. And yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for joining. Stay on the line. I'd like to chat with you more after the stream goes down. I'm just gonna pop over here. And I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. Thank you for joining me this evening. And thanks, chat, for coming in here and chatting with us. I noticed a lot of people dropped off as soon as we started talking about that subject. And that's fine. It's not for everybody. But I do like to, at least touch on some of these subjects. And, I want to be less inflammatory about it. And I try to take I put great detail in making sure that that's a thing. Al Stewart with a $20 super chat. Great guests, good dialogue. One more question. Your guest said it's funnier. Funnier by who? And I'm gonna assume Alex meant that it's like funny, their behavior. Their behavior's funny. Not the topic about what's being discussed, but the just the ludicrous behavior of a bunch of kids that are insisting that you wear masks to attend a protest, and and have a set of demands that have nothing to do with the actual protest and what it's about. So I think that's where the humor was. Anyway, I want to thank you guys. Content's going to be a little sporadic in the next couple of weeks. We're in the middle of a move. I'm in the middle of my garage here. I got boxes all around me, and we're going to be doing all that for the next little bit. But then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming of several videos a day for all of you to enjoy. So I want to thank you all for joining. Thanks for coming out, and well, we'll see you in the next one. Of course, keep on trucking.